Introducing 2005 Boys and Girls Club of America alumni Hall of Fame inductee, member of the Highland Park Boys and Girls Club in Detroit, Michigan, actor, writer, producer, Tony Award winner, and father of twins, Courtney B. Vance.
Thank you so much. Didn't you love the way I timed that walk out? That I was all the way over there, and by the time he finished, I was on the stage. Didn't you like that? I really appreciated that move. I did. I don't think you appreciated that much at all. Anyway, good afternoon. I'll say that again. Good afternoon. I'd like to read you a little story I think captures exactly what the Boys and Girls Clubs are all about. The story is called The Nerd. One day when I was a freshman in high school, I saw a kid from my class was walking home from school. His name was Kyle. It looked like he was carrying all of his books. I thought to myself, why would anyone bring home all of their books on a Friday? He must be a nerd. I had quite a weekend planned, parties and a football game with my friends the next afternoon, so I shrugged my shoulders and I went on. As I was walking, I saw a bunch of kids running toward him. They ran at him, knocking all of his books out of his hands, his arms, and tripping him so he landed in the dirt. His glasses went flying, and I saw them land in the grass about 10 feet from him. I looked up and I saw this terrible sadness in his eyes, and my heart just went out to him, so I jogged over. As he crawled around looking for his glasses, I saw a tear in his eye, and as I handed him his glasses, I said, "Those guys are jerks. They really should get lives." He looked at me and said, "Thanks." There was a big smile on his face. It was one of those smiles that showed real gratitude. I helped him pick his books up and asked him where he lived. As it turned out, he lived near me. So I asked him why I had never seen him before. He said he had gone to private school before now. I would have never hung out with a private school kid before. We talked all the way home, and I carried some of his books. He turned out to be a pretty cool kid. I asked him if he wanted to play a little football with my friends, and he said yes. We hung out all weekend, and the more I got to know Kyle, the more I liked him, and my friends thought the same of him. Monday morning came, and there was Kyle with another huge stack of books again. I stopped him and said, "Boy, you are really going to build up some serious muscles with this piles of books every day." He just laughed and handed me half the books. Over the next 4 years, Kyle and I became best friends. When we were seniors, we began to think about college. Kyle decided on Georgetown. I was going to Duke. I knew that we would always be friends, that the miles would never be a problem. He was going to be a doctor. I was going to go into business on a football scholarship. Kyle was valedictorian of our class. I teased him all the time about being a nerd. He had to prepare a speech for graduation. I was so glad that it wasn't me having to get up there and speak. Graduation day, I saw Kyle. He looked great. He was one of those guys that really found himself during high school. He filled out and actually looked good in glasses. He had more dates than I had, and all the girls loved him. Boy, sometimes I was jealous, and today was one of those days. I could see that he was nervous about the speech, so I smacked him on the back and said, "Hey, big guy, you'll be great." He looked at me with one of those looks, those really grateful ones, and smiled. "Thanks," he said. As he started his speech, he cleared his throat and began, "Graduation is a time to thank those who helped you make it through the tough years. Your parents, your teachers, your siblings, maybe a coach, but mostly your friends. I'm here to tell all of you that being a friend to someone is the best gift you can give them. So I'm going to tell you a little story." I looked at my friend with disbelief as he told the story of the first day we met. He had planned to take his own life over that weekend. He talked of how he had cleaned out his locker so his mom wouldn't have to do it later and was carrying all of his stuff home. He looked hard at me and gave me a little smile. I am so thankful I was saved. My friend saved me from doing the unspeakable. I heard a gasp go through the crowd as this handsome, popular boy told us all about his weakest moment. I saw his mom and dad looking at me and smiling that same grateful smile. Not until that moment did I realize its depth. Not until that moment did I realize how easy it is to look the other way or choose not to help. Not until that moment did I realize that the decision I made to help resulted in a lifelong friendship. Kyle finished his speech and we all hugged and had an amazing, unforgettable evening. But I know years from now, in the still of the night, when the house is asleep and the applause and good feelings have all but died away, and I look back over my life and I begin to think things over, and I look over at my wife soundly sleeping and peek in on our children resting sweetly, and I know that our friendship, Kyle's and mine, is truly a gift from God. Now to him who is able to keep us from falling and present us faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy. I was inducted into the Boys and Girls Club's Hall of Fame 9 years ago. And almost every year since that time, serving as their MC at the national conventions. I stand before 3,000 or so conventioneers and relate to them how important it is for us to acknowledge and thank all those who have helped shape and mold us into the people we have become today. I speak about that one person in my life, Mr. George Brown, a boys' club counselor, whom, when I was 10 or 11, stood in the gap for me and helped change the course of my life. It is a very moving story of a quiet hero in the life of a young boy. The reason I've read the story of the nerd for you is because I believe that there are just some things that just are. I believe there are some things that no matter who you are or what you believe in, no matter what your political or religious affiliation, deep down inside, we all know this one thing, that what matters in this life is more than winning for ourselves. What matters in this life is helping others win, even if it means slowing down and changing the course of our own lives. And that selflessness goes to the very heart of what the Boys and Girls Clubs are really all about. I truly believe that the Boys and Girls Clubs is a back-to-basics kind of organization, and it is because they have that kind of attitude that they have survived all the winds of change that have swept and continue to sweep this country, and yet they remain deeply committed to their mission of preparing young boys and girls for life. I am the man I am today because when I was a child, my parents continually placed me in positive places where I could dream. And in this world where truth is elusive and everything is not relative, where nothing is sacred and everything is fair game, where the basest part of our nature is lifted up and the moral high ground is below sea level, where our young people are being killed on elementary, high school, college campuses, and foreign soils, it is imperative that we continue to provide support for organizations such as the Boys and Girls Clubs for their commitment to our families. Because as the family goes, so goes the country. As the family goes, so goes our world. Can you imagine a world without the Boys and Girls Clubs? Can you imagine not having a safe place for your children and your children's children to play and to grow? Conversely, can you imagine if the men and women who fill our jails and juvenile centers had a safe place when they were young and where positive and not destructive behavior was rewarded? As the songwriter says, what a wonderful world it would be. Fortunately, the Boys and Girls Clubs is an organization that prides itself on keeping its 108-year-old focus pure on being a positive place for kids. In 2005, I was, as I mentioned earlier, inducted into the Boys and Girls Clubs Hall of Fame. It was a seminal day in my life. I think my speech that day best captures who I am and why the Boys and Girls Clubs is so important to myself and my family. And with your patience and blessing, I would like to read a little bit of it to you. Board members of the Boys and Girls, I had a deeper voice then. I was just going to do just to show you how deep my voice was back then. Boys and Girls Clubs, board members of the Boys and Girls Clubs, club members, families, friends. I do not want to speak long, nor do I have a great deal to say. I'm here today simply to say thank you. The Bible reminds us that we are blessed to be a blessing, and for everyone to whom much is given, from him or her much will be required, and of whom much has been committed of him or her, they will ask the more. You are honoring me with this induction into the Boys and Girls Clubs Hall of Fame, but it is I who am here to thank you and all those like you who took the time to help a little African-American boy named Courtney Bernard Vance grow into the man who stands before you today. I first want to thank God for keeping my family and I when we didn't know who or whom we were, whose we were. I want to thank my father and mother for taking the time with my sister and I, because time is one of the most valuable things in life. We did not have a great deal in the way of material things growing up, but our parents invested their time in us. And the return on that investment has been seen in our lives and will continue to be seen in the lives of our children and our children's children. Our parents taught us that if we reflect the core values we were taught in the home, that we can be salt and light out in the world. Our parents gave and gave and gave to us. And for that, we will be eternally grateful. I want to thank my sister, whom I love with all my heart. She stood up and protected me from the bad boys when I was little and couldn't take care of myself. Even to this day, she is fiercely protective of her little brother. I love you, Cecily. I want to thank the Boys and Girls Club for providing refuge for boys and girls across the country. All children do not grow up in the loving environment that my sister and I did. All children do not have two parents. But the Boys and Girls Clubs are there for all children, and for that I know I speak for millions of children and parents across this country in saying thank you. I want to thank Mr. George Brown, Big G, may God rest his soul, who was my father from the time my mom and dad dropped me off at camp until the time they come and picked me up that evening. Mr. Brown told my parents about the scholarships at the prestigious private school in Detroit, Detroit Country Day School, and that I would be a great candidate for one of them. My parents loved and trusted Mr. Brown implicitly, and he and my dad became very good friends. When my father succumbed to the troubles he was having with depression and committed suicide over 20 years ago, it was Mr. Brown who was one of the first ones that at my mother's house to offer any help that was needed. He was my camp counselor, my track coach. My American history teacher. But most importantly, he was my friend for almost 40 years, and for that I'm very thankful. I want to thank our many neighbors and babysitters who kept an eye out for us when our parents were at work. I want to thank all the teachers and coaches who taught me the fundamentals. I love school and sports, and it was due in large part to their passion for teaching and coaching. And it is because of them and the countless others, unsung heroes like them, that I stand before you today, a confident, responsible family man. I want to thank all my friends and relatives who remained so while I found myself. I want to thank all my pastors and counselors who continue to forge me into the man whom my wife and God need me to be. And finally, last but certainly not least, I want to thank my wife, Angela, for putting the final touches on me. All the husbands say amen. She was not able to be with me this evening as she is caring for her ailing aunt and uncle down in North Carolina. I often tell her that she has made me the man I am today, and if it were not for her, I don't know where I'd be. So in a very real sense, as you can see, the seeds for all the wonderful things that have happened to me in my life, Detroit Country Day School, Harvard, Yale School of Drama, my career, my family, etc., were planted back in that small Highland Park, Michigan club. I will always be indebted to the Boys and Girls Clubs for providing me with that safe place to dream. I came out of high school, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I've said to myself, when I get to college, because I wanted to go to Harvard because my uncle went to Harvard, and so it was a dream since I was 11, and I achieved that goal. And I went to Harvard, and I said, man, when I get here, we're all going to figure out what we want to do together. And I got there, and felt like I was the only one in the whole place that didn't know what I wanted to do. So I felt really alone, and so I sympathize and empathize. It's a tough world. And it's even more complicated these days with the internet and everything. And in the past, when I was growing up, and my parents' generation, there was so much that we just didn't know. There was only 9 channels on the television. I mean, and at 11 o'clock, it went off. It just went boop. Sounds like somebody out there remembers those days. But so the children it's a very complex world, and the club provided me with all of the tools to begin. And because I went to the Country Day, I was able then to segue into Harvard. And because I went to Harvard, I said, I'm going to try to do plays, because when I do a play, I'll meet a different group of people every play, every show. And then if I meet the kids, we'll figure it out what we're going to do together. And after my second show, I said, you know what? I think this is what I want to do. And that segued me into Yale School of Drama, and I was a security guard on the midnight shift at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. And I said, this is, I was reading the book Sophie's Choice, and I said, Meryl Streep went to Yale, so I want to go to Yale. And I applied to Yale, and I got into Yale. And then I happened to be at Yale when Lloyd Richards and August Wilson were there, and I read the play Fences in the library, and I said, wow, this is a great play. Some big football player type is going to play James Earl Jones' son. And I closed the book, and I went on back to my class, and my girlfriend at the time told me, Courtney, you better look at the call board, because, well, you better go look at the call board. And my name was there, and I saw my life shift and change, and that I ended up on Broadway and introduced to the theatrical world, and everything else in my career came because of being at Yale at the time when Lloyd Richards and August Wilson were there and teamed up, and then all of a sudden the movies happened, and I met my wife, and the children came. So it's amazing how when you give a child, a young person, the opportunity to dream, that those children that were right before you, that was me. I make no distinction between them and me. That was me. And Mr. Brown, I don't know why, he plucked me. He said, Courtney, come on, where's your parents? I want to talk to them. And all of a sudden, I remember as it was yesterday, I was in the basement in the summer before ninth grade, and my dad said, so son, where you going to school? And I said, I don't know, Daddy, I guess I'm going to St. Mary's of Redford, because I know we can't afford Country Day, so that's where I'm going to go to high school probably. He said, no, son, no. We're going to send you to Country Day. I was the happiest boy, because I knew the sacrifice that it was going to mean for the family. Even with the scholarship, it was going to cost a lot of money. And I knew it was a family decision. And I got there, and I did everything at that school. And I couldn't understand why everyone else didn't do the same thing. I was so excited every day to go to school. And that's what happens when you give a child a dream, when you give them the opportunity to see what they could be. Don't give me an opportunity to see something. And that's what we're doing here. That's why what we do is so important in this world that is crazy now. You know, and I know how crazy this world is, and without an advocate out there, without children, without opportunities, it's over. And there's communities that don't have this support, these 1,000 people in this room. I think it is appropriate for me to end with Today Is Ours, the signature piece, sign-off piece that Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee used for their television series. It was also a staple in Ossie and Ruby's joint appearances. Their grandchildren said that they often did it at family gatherings and dinners, and it was a poem Miss Ruby got from Bea Richards, whose grandmother used to recite it. The original author is unknown, but Ruby included it in almost all of her performances, including her one-woman show entitled My Last Nerve. It encompasses all that they were about as individuals and as husband and wife, and it's called Today Is Ours. Today is ours. Let's live it. And love is strong. Let's give it. A song can help. Let's sing it. And peace is dear. Let's bring it. The past is gone. Don't rue it. Our work is here. Let's do it. The world is wrong. Let's right it. The battle is hard. Let's fight it. The road is rough. Let's clear it. The future is vast. Don't fear it. Is faith asleep? Let's wake it. Today is ours. Let's take it. Thank you very much.